The siren started while the lift line still snaked across the parking lot. Patrol skis clacked past us, and the mountain safety chief raised his hand like a conductor, smiling as the gondola doors slid shut. The morning air tasted like metal and frost, and the mountain roared back an answer from somewhere you only hear when snow decides to move. It wasn't supposed to roar. This was Engelberg, Switzerland, a place that sells postcards of safety pinned to cliffs. The date, Saturday, February 8, 2025, was stenciled across lift tickets and our hotel confirmation from the Bellevue terminus, like a promise. The night before had dropped 52 centimeters at Titlis mid-station, with northwest winds, 9C at 2,200 meters, and a layer-cake snowpack that would have made a textbook blush. The Swiss avalanche bulletin rated it 3 to considerable and warned of cohesion changes within the storm slab and persistent weak layers above 2,400 NAMDAs, NE aspects. The bulletin also said something unusual. Controlled openings may happen later than usual. Unusual because midwinter weekends don't like delays. Delays shave tickets and thin margins. He hated delays. The mountain safety chief role, not name, was a local celebrity in a red jacket and a charm that didn't set off metal detectors. He'd been hired from La Plagne, trained in Davos, gave TEDx talks about nudging risk perception, and could recite run names like lullabies. He was the guy in glossy videos tapping a pole into wind-loaded pillows and telling the camera, in Swiss German and English, "We manage uncertainty so you can find joy." People bought T-shirts. I'd known him a season and a half. I work in numbers that freeze a structural engineer by training, moved to Zurich 5 years ago for a job in bridge assessment, then bought a used touring setup and fell in love with the geometry of snow. On weekends, I volunteered with the regional ski club, measuring endpoints and teaching avalanche basics, compression tests, extended column tests, propagation saw tests that sound like the names of bands. I don't scare easy, and I don't worship quick smiles. Still, I liked him. He returned calls. He remembered faces. He refused to sign off on a bad day in December 2023, when rain glazed a crust over talc and every slope felt like a tablecloth trick. The red flags in 2025 didn't wave. They hissed. 2 weeks before the February storm, the resort sent an email to pass holders about lift optimization dynamic pricing. They'd added an early open promise to their new app. If the top gondola, Klein Titlis, opened by 09:15 on weekends with 15 cm plus new snow, full-price ticket buyers would automatically get a 15 CHF voucher. If it didn't open by 09:15, nobody got anything. Read that again. Pressure looks like an app feature sometimes. At the same time, a rumor skied faster than the truth. A boutique travel company from London had pre-bought 140 VIP tickets at 118 CHF each for February 8th for a powder experience with a sponsor reel. They promised first cabins and guided laps with a lens pointed at them. The resort Instagram began to hint. The safety chief smiled through it. In the patrol room the Friday night before, he raised a can of Feldschlösschen and said, "We'll be cautious and clever," a sentence that is both a blessing and a dare. He pointed at the bulletin. "North aspects above 2,400 spook me. We'll bomb the Galtiberg start zones twice and ski-cut the exit. We'll hold Klein Titlis if the ECT shows full propagation." He tapped the whiteboard where someone had written ECTP 1214 last week at 2,500 Mother Matza NE aspect. Or we won't, we'll see. I went home and set 2 alarms. The snow kept falling. Opening hook 0842, Saturday, parking lot full. The siren started mid-sentence from the gondola PA. "Bitte beachten Sie," and then the rising whale patrol uses when clearing a zone. 2 patrol teams skated past. The chief raised his hand and lifted his chin at the lifties, who nodded and kept loading cabins. The app pinged, "Top gondola, opening 0910. People cheered like a football goal had been scored. A woman near me, French by vowels, American by mittens, said, "We're getting it." Her partner fist-bumped and filmed. We rode to stand. The wind had carved lips into cornices like a sneer. At the snow study plot near Trubsy, I ducked under the rope with a patroller I knew, a guy named Lucas with a beard that had opinions. He let me pull a quick compression test in the shaded trees. CT11, Q1, sudden planar shear at 28 cm down on faceted crystals under last week's wind slab. We ran an ECT, ECTP 13, propagation. Snow nerd translation, you tap 13 times, the whole column fractures clean across and slides. You don't need a PhD to know that's a bad day. "Are they still opening the top?" I asked. Lucas shrugged but didn't smile. "Orders are to proceed with caution. We're doubling the shots. He wants photos of the charges." He didn't have to say why. I watched the safety chief traverse above the cliff band on the entry to Steinberg with 2 charges in his pack. One under his arm, the lanyard looped around a pole. He moved like a story he'd told before. The first blast dropped a curtain of snow like a stage trick. The second released a shallow slab that ran 200 meters. He radioed, brisk. Release, 1520 scimitar, no step down. He gave the nod again. The app ticked to 0913, top gondola open. The VIP group clapped. That was the moment my stomach learned to write its own language. Partner intro. He wasn't a monster. He'd pulled a kid out of a tree well in January and cried in the medic tent after. He'd turned off the cameras for a family in December who didn't want pity on film. He'd told me once, on a long traverse, that the thing he feared wasn't funerals, it was the tiny ways budgets ask you to betray mornings. He quoted statistics like lullabies. He said, 3 is not 5, meaning considerable is not high, and you can still move with brains and bamboo. He also started wearing a different watch. A sponsor sent it. Sometimes he lowered his goggles just long enough to look like someone who knows he shouldn't be seen. Conflict build-up. Year 947. We dropped into an inbounds run that acts like backcountry if you treat it wrong. Galtyberg, a long white river with consequences. Patrol had marked a safe gate. Bamboo fenced the cliffy gully, strung red rope across the convex rolls. We watched the safety chief ski the cut above the first roll. Side slip, tap, traverse, tap. A small slab popped and ran 3 seconds. He waved VIPs to hold, then waved them on. It looked responsible if you didn't know there were 3 layers in that cake. Lucas's radio cracked with calls from upper stand. 2 remote releases on the NE face, no burials, 1 ski lost. Then, as if the mountain wanted to remind everyone who writes the rules, the lower bowl hummed. You feel a slab fracture in your ankles before your ears catch up. The vibro travels through your bones and turns vowels into consonants. A chunk of the bowl fractured above the shoelace traverse. A man yelled, the good kind loud and useful, and 2 patrollers cut it off with a diagonal line like an argument cleanly won. The safety chief's voice cut in. Hold, we keep moving. We watch the traverse. We keep tight. The pressure was not physics, it was economics. The CFO had presented at the January town hall, weekend days pay the season's debt. Open terrain equals solvency, he'd said, like he was explaining a kettle. Every 15 minutes of delay cost 3,000 CHF in unrealized revenue. He'd smiled at the safety chief like an ally and a brick wall. The travel company had paid for a first cabin's promise. The app had clicked to green. The officer in red had signed. Breaking point, 10:16. Mid-station cafeteria windows packed with faces, phones aimed like periscopes. The siren sounded again, 2 long, 1 short from above Galtyberg, which is the mountain's way of saying, stop pretending. The traverse bench cut, collapsed under a snowboarder with a helmet camera and pants too loud for an obituary. He rode the slab on his board for a second, then went in. Patrol saw him and 2 others go. The debris ran 350 meters, medium power, step down at the old crust. D2+ on the Canadian scale, enough to break trees, not enough to eat buildings. 3 heads popped up. 1 didn't. I have never loved bamboo sticks more than I did watching patrollers mark a leash line through debris while the world held its breath. The safety chief skated to the crown, clipped a transceiver to his chest, switched to search, and acted like he wanted the mountain to forgive him. They found the buried snowboarder at 4 minutes 50 seconds, 120 centimeters down near a tree. He came out blue-lipped, chest compression started, an airway shoved in, a bag valve mask pumping with hope. They got a pulse. The kind that shows up because 10 people refuse not to. The VIP sponsor turned their cameras away for once. The crowd went quiet in that way, you can hear your own pulses go out of sync. The safety chief looked at the traverse and at the cameras and at the app on his wrist. He turned to the patrol line and said, without the mic, we're closing. He said it like a man who remembered what Saturdays were before apps. Protagonist reaction, calm, methodical, taking back control. I could have gone home and cried. I did later, but not then. I walked to the snow study plot near the patrol hut and asked to pull another ECT with Lucas. ECTP 12, same story. I wrote it down in my field notebook, 1043, 2002 60 men, NE aspect, HS 175 centimeters, CT 11 SP 28 centimeters, ECTP 12. I took photos with my phone, GPS turned on. I asked Lucas quietly about explosive logs. He showed me his tablet with the morning's shots logged in PatrolSoft. 0835, charge 2 Kilalka Comp B at Steinberg entry 1, 08040, 2 Kilalas at entry 2, 08.57, 3 Kilara at Galtyberg start zone. He scrolled. We were supposed to do a second pass, he said. Then the call came to focus on opening the top for 0915. From who? I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Aftermath, receipts, bank accounts, contracts, screenshots, legal. That afternoon, after the snowboarder was in the ambulance with warm IVs and a prayer chain that spanned 3 languages, I went back to my room at the Bellevue terminus and opened my laptop like a weapon. The resort's app changelog had a feature deployment note on January 27th. OSS 931, add early open promise logic to top Gondola. The code repo public notes they'd hired a trendy dev who liked public pages, showed commit times. The green light at error 9.15 had been added with an override for safety hold ignore after error 912 if open flag true. Who writes that? People who believe flags keep them safe from their own future selves. I filed an incident report with the Canton's safety office. Avalanche incident at approx. Does 10:16. Galtyberg Traverse, 1 full burial, rescue at 5 Min, crown at 30-40 scimitars, reactivated at persistent weak layer. Possible premature opening due to app-based incentive. I CC'd the SLF, WSL Institute for Snow and Avalanche Research, in Davos with my ECT results attached. I wrote to the resort's email for security, so it would be archived and not hello where charm goes to die. I included screenshots. App timestamp at 0910, switching to open. Video of the Siren as cabins loaded, geotagged snow pit images, and 3 photos of the explosive log on Lucas's tablet. I wrote with dates, elevations, coordinates, and without adjectives. That night, the travel company posted a curated video. Engelberg delivered. Thanks for the first cabins. Comments began friendly, turned uneasy, then turned into something that smelled like accountability. Someone had filmed the burial and posted a shaky outline. No faces, just snow. The caption read, "This is why you don't rush openings." Monday morning, the safety chief posted a statement on the resort website. We had multiple releases but no major step-downs during control work. We opened with vigilance. After the incident at 10:16, we closed the terrain. We will review. The press office added, "Safety is our priority." The sentence that makes everyone shrug, because meaning has bled out of it. I took a train to Zurich and went to work like engineers do when mountains misbehave. Quietly, precisely. I sketched a diagram of the slope, labels, crown lines, angles. 34-38 at the start zone, the numbing sweet spot for slabs. Aspect, the bench cut that becomes a trap. I wrote a memo to myself. When money buys minutes, it buys risk. I printed it and slid it into a folder labeled Engelberg 020-825 because order calms me when physics won't. Escalation, stalking, obsessive texts showing up. That night he found my public Instagram not hard. I post Sunrise Bridge photos and sent a DM, "Careful what story you think you're telling." Not a threat. A tone. The next day he stood outside the Bellevue terminus at 1840, pretending to talk to sponsors about managing narratives. He waved at me like we'd bumped carts in a grocery store. 2 days later, he showed up at the Zurich office of my firm, head cocked like a friendly dog, and left a brochure for an open day with patrol with a smiley face drawn beneath his name. He also sent a late-night email to my volunteer club, CCing my coach, suggesting my enthusiasm for tests had demoralized patrol during a difficult day. So I documented. I kept a log, date, time, location, what he wore, words he used. I BCC'd myself on emails I sent to SLF and the Canton. I set my Instagram to private and screenshotted the DM. I called a friend in Zug who works for an insurer, a man named Sebastian, who has spent a decade reading What Went Wrong reports written by people trying not to cry. He said, "Send me your folder," then said, "I will introduce you to a person." Positive turn, the person was a mountain guide named Veronique from Lausanne, UIAGM certified, whose French makes you feel like you can read contours with your toes. She sits on a volunteer advisory group with SLF and knows how to write a sentence regulators want to hear. I met her in a cafe by the Zurich HB, where the coffee costs like it's structural steel. She spread my photos on the table and said, "You're precise, keep it." She called a person at the Canton's Bureau for Arbeitssicherheit and said in gestured German, "This isn't about blame, it's about incentives and systems." She also called someone at the travel company and told them in English, "If you post one more edit calling it rare and exciting, I will film your CEO using a hairdryer to dry his boots and call it brand synergy." She accompanied me to a meeting with the Canton's safety officer, a man with hands like a cabinet maker and a habit of looking at the floor when truth walked in. We presented my snow data, the app features, the override logic, the explosive logs, and the early open promise screen grabs. The safety chief sat across the table, jaw working, red jacket replaced by a grey sweater that wanted to pretend at humility. He opened his mouth twice, closed it, then finally said, We had conflicting inputs, and I made a call to open under observation. The app is marketing. Mikey, yes, a different Mikey. Zurich seems to export them, raised a hand. If marketing can flip a digital flag that puts pressure on Patrol to meet a time, it is not neutral. It is a lever. Show us the governance document for the app override. The resort's COO, a man who says synergy with an accent that pays for dinner, slid a paper across. Open flag may override safety hold for up to 7 minutes at the discretion of the mountain safety chief. Veronique tapped the page. That's not discretion, that's a trap. After 2 hours, the canton filed a formal request for a Betriebsuntersuchung operational review. They demanded logs, interviewed Patrol, interviewed the snowboarder, alive, discharged after 2 days, with a stern note from a cardiologist and a tattoo of gratitude no one could see, and asked SLF to audit the snowpack calls. SLF issued a report 3 weeks later that felt like a careful scalpel. Multiple small to medium slab releases observed. ECTP in NE aspects confirmed. Decision to open with caution, not outside norms but interaction with marketing incentives, created a time sensitivity that conflicts with best practice. Recommendation: decouple marketing promises from safety decisions. Require dual sign-off for overrides. Document ski cut results with standardized language. Immediate closure upon remote releases in traverse zones. The travel company posted another video, this time of a cabin interior and a cappuccino. Comments asked, "Is the mountain okay?" They turned off comments. The resort responded with a press release. "We are suspending the early open promise, creating a red line between safety and marketing, and adding a second signatory, Patrol lead, to any override." They also quietly removed the safety chief from the Instagram hero reels. He kept his job but lost the videos. I didn't cheer, I just breathed like a person who had been waiting for the mountain to be treated like the law. He escalated one last time. He sent me a letter through a lawyer hinting at defamation if I continued to imply negligence. My lawyer friend in Zug wrote a 2-paragraph response: humans should save. Truth is a defense, opinion is permitted. Our client has provided factual observations with documentation to regulators. Any further contact should be through counsel. He also printed the "careful what story you think you're telling" DM and stapled it to his letter like a backup battery. Ending twist, circle back to the Siren, the lift line, the conductor hand. April, season close. The mountain held on to winter like a child who knows bedtime is a political act. I rode the gondola with Veronique and Lucas. We stopped at the snow study plot and ran one last ECT for nostalgia. The column stayed. We laughed. We took a photo with a shovel like a trophy. At 8:45, a siren sounded. Not the wrong one this time, but the stubby buzz of an inbounds control blast. Patrol tagged 2 start zones with hand charges, clouds puffed like small arguments, and nothing moved. The safety chief stood with the patrol lead, signing a form that requires both hands now. He caught my eye and didn't wave. He looked older. He looked like a man who had learned that the mountain resents being timed. The app pinged with a different message. Open times subject to safety. Thank you for your patience. Nobody clapped. We clicked into our bindings, cut a clean line down a slope that had decided to stay put, and skied into a morning that didn't need to smile to prove anything. The siren quieted, and for the first time all season it sounded like what it is supposed to. A tool, not a sales pitch.